r/AskReddit by Redmond Dtes. Therapists. What is something people tell you that they are ashamed of but is actually normal? They regret having kids or weren't instantly attached to their child when they were born. It's a lot more common than people think, but the subject is extremely taboo and is not often as discussed due to the shame and guilt that comes with it. I mentioned having these feelings in a supposedly safe space once. I had no idea people could be so over the top mean and cruel in their replies. It was deeply traumatizing and I never mentioned it to anyone since. Having really effed up thoughts. Intrusive, violent or uncomfortable thoughts are very common. That is call of the void. For most they are a passing thing like oh that's weird, but for some they get stuck and people judge themselves for them thinking there is something wrong with them. Smash your baby against the wall. The F. Brain? Jump off the Grand Canyon. No. What is wrong with you? The most vivid one I had recently was when I was doing the dishes and brain was like, stuff your hand in the garbage disposal. WTF no. That they do not know what they enjoy doing. Often they have people in their life, including therapists, say try to do something fun today or ask what do you like to do when you have free time. Many people I work with do not know what those are. Once I explain that I dislike these statements questions because they assume people should know the answer, and that many people don't, I can watch as they relax, take a deep breath, and say something to the effect of oh my, that's so good to hear. I have no idea what I like to do. That's part of the problem. More often than not they feel like they should know and that everyone else their age has it figured out. They are embarrassed to say that they don't know when in fact not knowing is very common. I couldn't even try to count how many clients I've had this conversation with. I've had patients describe their imposter syndrome in great detail, and are genuinely surprised when I say everyone feels like that, myself included sometimes. Mixed or even positive feelings when loved one dies after a protracted illness. Especially someone who hung on for a long time, very sick and suffering, or an older relative with dementia. There's often a feeling of relief, of at least that's over. It's perfectly normal and it doesn't mean you didn't love the person. Feeling conflicted when a caregiver who abused them is exposed faces consequences. Many express feeling bad for them because this person abused them but they also took care of them, provided for them, etc. I always try to tell them that what they're feeling is normal and understandable but that the abuse needs to face consequences for what they have done. For context, I primarily work with preteens who've experienced sexual abuse. Having intrusive thoughts. Thinking about steering into oncoming traffic is a popular one. Also, when they are talking about in a dialogue people fear I'd consider them psychotic. Edit. For those interested or struggling with intrusive thoughts I highly recommend The Imp of the Mind by L. Bear. It's well written and has some great exercises. Regarding in a negative dialogue Breaking Negative Thinking Patterns by Gitta Jacobs is generally considered to be a very practical self-help book. They're no substitute for therapy obviously but I think both can benefit any reader. When you're recovering from an addiction, it's nothing to be ashamed of if you lapse or relapse. It's a part of quitting. It doesn't mean you failed, and it doesn't mean it's hopeless to try. Their trauma histories. Being conflicted about certain aspects of their abuse, like loving their abuser or not hating all aspects of the abuse. Suicidal thoughts. Feeling worthless or just not loved. I've also had many clients who hate or refuse to talk about their strengths or what they like about themselves. How much debt they have and the anxiety that it creates it for them. One of the teachers at my high school tried to commit suicide and framed it like someone had attacked him. It was a big deal in our town, especially when the truth came out. Turns out it was all because he was in debt and embarrassed about it. I've gotten a lot of clients complaining about how their friends and acquaintances have passed them by in terms of career, romantic relationships, etc. The reality is a lot of people feel that way but also can become successful at any point. Going from my limited experience as an assistant working with mostly very traumatized adults, I get the impression that suicidal thoughts are common. Explained as then I won't have to suffer anymore. Fear and anxiety are two monsters that shape themselves to fit the person experiencing them. but both are also common. A very specific one that many of my residents struggle with is survivor's guilt, meaning they can't get to terms with the fact that others died while traveling together. Edit. A lot of comments talk about suicide as being an option. It is, but it is a bad one. I urge all of you who honestly consider going that route to seek professional help. Death is not the solution to life. The sudden urge to jump off a cliff or a tall building when you are standing on the edge. Edit. Similarly, many males and a few females too have confessed of having an uncontrollable urge to smack or pinch or grab a nice butt as soon as they see one within a hand's reach. Defining what normal is. It doesn't matter whether emotions or issues are normal by societal standards or not. If they are emotionally taxing and are important for you, it needs to be addressed. Normal does not matter in the scheme of therapy. Personally, it shouldn't matter ever. Don't be embarrassed to talk to your therapist. The only place you'll find normal is a cycle on a washing machine. Masturbating. 90% of my teenage clients think they have a sexual or porn addiction because they masturbate almost every day. Every single one has parents who are too uncomfortable to talk about sex, use fear to deter their sexual activity, use religious sin as a deterrent, or a combination of these. My colleagues and I find ourselves teaching sex education to them and explaining what an addiction really is. So far, only one does it enough that it has a detrimental effect on their relationships and responsibilities. Therapist here. Many of my clients struggle with setting healthy boundaries or leaving unhealthy relationships. Through therapy, many of my clients finally realize how unhealthy their family is or their partners are, but they feel responsible for the well-being of the people in their lives. As in, they've said they'll kill themselves if I leave them, or I'm the only one who knows how to calm mom down. Imposter syndrome is a big one. Also, I've encountered grown adults who have so much shame around sex they have difficulty verbalizing words like penis, vagina, orgasm, or masturbation. Suicidal thoughts. Many people don't realize just how common they are. For some people it is actually a coping mechanism. I like to think of thoughts of self-harm as a barometer for an average person. Suicidal thoughts often come up when we know something needs to change, but unsure what it may be or how to achieve that change. Grief. Not just when a loved one passes from a prolonged illness, but also so many people feel they are not grieving the right way. Too long, not long enough, how soon is too soon, or the disenfranchised grief of I hurt them so I don't deserve to grieve them, and endless variations. There is no right or wrong in grief, pretty much. It just does what it wants. As a sex therapist, almost everything. Seriously, the actually kinky folks I get are never ashamed of it by the time they find me. And the folks ashamed of it are always ashamed of really normal stuff. Kinky by my standards. Not maintaining personal hygiene when you're depressed. I run group therapy for mostly depressed and anxious adults, and I typically ask them to set goals. Quite often when someone is just starting out, they have been neglecting showering or brushing their teeth. If they are even willing to talk about it, this is a common goal for someone's first week with us. I try to stress as much as I can that this is a common side effect of many mental health problems, but people have a really hard time internalizing that. There's a ton of shame and guilt tied to not being able to take care of yourself. Man, I hope all of you are doing okay after reading some of these. We're all in this together. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. Have a nice evening.